Hello, welcome back to Halo Fleet Battles Week on Fleet Signal. My name is Alex, and today I'm going to take a look at the Covenant fleet in the Fall of Reach starter set. We'll take a look at each of the ships and their stats and loadouts and things like that, and we'll also briefly touch on fleet building in passing as well. Also, we'll have a look at the Covenant Supreme Commander Rho Barutamee as well. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, let's start with the big guy, the ORS Heavy Cruiser. So you can see that it's a large capital ship and it costs 220 points for supported, 200 for unsupported. So the unsupported ship is a little bit cheaper, but as you'll see it's also a little bit weaker as well. And it actually doesn't have as many weapons as the support version does. So the movement for both is 5 inches, so it's not the fastest of ships. And the damage track is 11-10-6 on supported, 11-10-5 on unsupported. So if you've seen the UNSC video, you'll notice that the UNSC ships, when they're unsupported, they lose a point off the first number on the damage track, whereas the Covenant lose that number on the last number of the damage track. So I suppose you could say that the UNSC ships are maybe slightly easier to weaken, but the Covenant ships are a bit easier to finish off. The build rating on the supported is 5, unsupported is 4. So if you want to add some heavy corvettes to a supported heavy cruiser, then you can only add 1 base, whereas on the unsupported you'd be able to add 2 bases worth of corvettes, because each corvette's base is worth 1 BR. Okay, moving on to hangars, you can see that the supported ORS has a 6 on the hangar rating, whereas the unsupported has 5. So again, that differs from the UNSC because on, for example, the Epoch, both the supported and the unsupported Epoch both have 6 on their hangar rating, whereas the unsupported ORS loses a point on the hangar ratings. So you can't put as many wings on the unsupported as you can on the supported. They both have boarding craft 3, so they can both hold 3 boarding craft. And security detail is 5 on supported and 4 on unsupported. Okay, moving on to system loadouts. The Covenant system loadouts are actually quite interesting. First of all, we have cloaking system. This basically reduces the firepower rating of any attack against this ship by -1. So firepower rating 4, which is a default roll, goes down to a 3. It also has defense array 5, which is basically its defense stat. When the ship is attacked, then you roll 5 dice to defend against it, or I should say you add 5 dice to the defense pool. And it also has glide 3 inches. This is cool. This lets the ship glide side to side instead of turning when it moves. So it could be sitting in a gas cloud and then glide out of the cloud, fire at something, and then on next activation glides back into the gas cloud, where it's harder to attack it. So that's a really cool thing that these ships can do, and I think all of the Covenant ships actually do have glide. Yeah, all of the elements have glide. So it's a really cool little ability that the Covenant can do. This ship also has point defense 6 on supported and point defense 5 on unsupported, which defends against bombers. It also defends against boarding craft and missiles. Okay, moving on to weapons, we can see that the supported ORS has a primary weapon of either plasma lance or plasma beam. One or the other can be fired in an attack, but not both in the same activation. And the secondary weapon is plasma cannon arrays or plasma cannon torpedoes. Sorry, plasma torpedoes. So again, one or the other, but not both in an attack in any given activation. However, the plasma torpedoes are missing on the unsupported ORS Heavy Cruiser. Okay, so the plasma lance has a range of 18 or 32 inches depending on short or long range, and that does actually make a difference with the lance, as you'll see in a second. The weapon loadout is plasma, and also if the plasma lance is firing at short range, it gets +1 on firepower rating. If it's firing at long range, it gets -1 on the firepower rating. It also has arc of F or P or S, which is 4 or plasma or starboard. So you can fire in one of those arcs, but not all of them when you attack with the plasma lance. And it contributes 14 dice to the attack of that, for that battle group, or if it's attacking on its own, to its own attack. Now the plasma beam can only be fired in short range. It doesn't have a long range stat, so it can only be fired up to 12 inches. However, when you're firing with it, it increases your firepower rating in that attack by 1 up to a maximum of firepower rating 5. It can also be fired in 4 or port or starboard arcs, and it adds 9 dice in each of those arcs. However, the cool thing about the plasma beam is that it can target, I should say, up to 3 different targets in that arc. So if you're firing, for example, with only the cruiser, and you have 3 different targets in the 4 arc, for example, you can target each of those targets individually. Now moving on to the secondary weapons, we've got plasma cannon arrays with a range of 10 or 20 inches. Weapon loadout is plasma, and the plasma cannon array gets +1 to firepower rating at short range and -1 at long range. It can also fire in either 4, port or starboard arcs and contributes 12 dice to the attack. Plasma torpedoes have a range of 12 or 24 inches. They get +1 to firepower rating in short range, and weirdly, -1 plasma, +1 missile on firepower rating at long range. Now it does seem slightly confusing, but the way that I read it is that it kind of cancels itself out. So it's -1 because it's plasma, it's +1 because it's missiles, so it's a net effect of 0. Maybe with a few more games I'd be able to clarify that further, but as far as I know at the moment, having only played a couple of games of Halo, that's how it works as far as I can tell. Okay, the arc is 4 arc, so plasma torpedoes can only be fired in the 4 arc, and each element of plasma torpedoes contributes 5 dice. Now when you move on to the unsupported ORS, of course it loses the plasma torpedoes, but the other stats stay relatively the same. The primary weapon stats are actually the same as the supported, but the plasma cannon arrays go down to 10 dice instead of 12. Okay, now let's check out the CCS Battlecruiser. So we can see it's a medium capital ship. It costs 170 points for supported and 150 points for unsupported. The movement is 7 inches for supported and 8 inches for unsupported. So maybe that little guy supporting the battlecruiser is, slowing it down in some way. The damage track is 874 for supported, 873 for unsupported. So, much like the heavy cruiser, it loses that extra point on the damage track at the end of the track, not the beginning like the UNSC. And the build rating is 4 for supported and 3 for unsupported. So let's take a look at the hangars now. The hangars, 3 for supported, 2 for unsupported. So you can put 1 fewer token, like wing token, on the unsupported ship. The boarding craft are the same, and the security detail is 5 for supported, 4 for unsupported. So moving on to the loadouts, it has carrier action 1 on both versions. So if you've seen the UNSC video, then it pretty much acts in the same way. Basically, you can recycle a wing token in the next activation of this ship. You can literally bring it back to the battlefield. Defense array is 5 and 4 on supported and unsupported respectively, and it can also glide 4 inches, which is that cool lateral movement that the Covenant ships can do, the Covenant elements can do, to glide in and out of places and move laterally. Point defense is 4 up here and 3 down here. Okay, so weapons. The supported has the plasma lance and the plasma cannon arrays or the plasma torpedoes, whereas the unsupported only has the lance and the arrays. The plasma lance is a range of 18 or 32 inches, just like the ORS. Weapon loadout plasma arcs are 4, port or starboard, and it chucks 12 dice into the attack pool. On the secondary weapons, we've got the plasma cannon arrays, 10 or 20 inches, plasma loadout, front, port or starboard again, and it throws 10 dice into the attack pool. The plasma torpedoes contribute 5 dice when firing with that weapon, and at a range of 12 or 24 inches. Now, on the unsupported version of the CCS Battlecruiser, the plasma lance actually contributes the same amount of dice, 12, and up there you can see 12 as well. However, on the secondary weapon front, we lose the plasma torpedoes, and the number of dice thrown by the arrays goes down to 9, down from 10. So the extra 20 points for the supported Battlecruiser gives you the plasma torpedoes, one point more of security detail, a slightly tougher ship at the end of the damage track, and a little bit more point defense as well as a bit more dice on the plasma cannon array. So you have to make that decision. Is that extra 20 points worth taking the supported version, or if you need to cut back, then there's no shame in taking the unsupported version. It's still a really good ship. Okay, so moving on to the heavy corvettes, we've got heavy corvettes in line formation and in oblique formation. They're small ships, and each type of formation costs 40 points. They both have a maximum movement of 9 inches. The damage track is 443 for line formation, 433 for the oblique formation. So interestingly, these guys lose a point on the damage track in the middle of the track, not at the beginning or the end. And the build rating is 1 for both. Now, they each have one hangar, so these guys actually can hold a wing token on board, unlike, for example, the Paris frigates, which cannot. The boarding craft is 0, they won't have any boarding craft, and security detail is 2. Now, moving on to cloaking loadouts, they both have cloaking system. They both have a defense array of 2. They both have elusive, glide of 5 inches, so even more gliding shenanigans with these guys. And they each have a point defense of 3. So they're actually, quite well defended for, as small ships go. So moving on to weapons now, we've got plasma cannon arrays and plasma torpedoes. Plasma cannon arrays 10 and 20 inches at short and long range. Torpedoes are 12 and 24 inches at short and long range. The arc is FPS and F respectively for each type of weapon. However, in line formation, the plasma cannon arrays, the PCAs, throw 3 dice, whereas in oblique formation they throw 4 dice. And the plasma torpedoes throw 4 dice in line formation as opposed to 3 dice in oblique formation. So the dice numbers kind of switch around depending on which formation you take. So if you're all about those plasma cannons, then you might want to go with oblique formation. Whereas if you prefer plasma torpedoes, then you want to lean more heavily towards line formation. And of course, you can always take a mix, because the build rating is only 1, and the maximum build rating for any given battle group is 6. So you can always take a mix of line and oblique if you want to, or you can specialize in one or the other. It's up to you. Okay, now let's move on to flight tokens for the Covenant. Here we have a Seraph Interceptor and a Tarasque Bomber. So they each occupy 1 flight slot per token, which means that ships like even the Heavy Corvette can accommodate them. And the movement is 16 inches for a Seraph and 14 inches for a Tarasque Bomber. They each have a damage track of 2 and no system loadouts. So moving on to weapons, similarly to the UNSC ships, the Interceptor can go up against wing targets. It has to be in contact range, so base to base contact, and the dice is 2 per token. So for example, a flight of 6 of these will throw out 12 dice. Pretty scary. Whereas the Tarasque Bomber has weapons against wing targets and element targets, but it's better against elements. It throws 2 dice per token against elements and 1 dice against wings. So just like the UNSC Bomber, you want to send this guy out on attack runs against elements, and if you have to engage a wing target, then okay, fair enough, it can do that, but you don't really want to have these guys fighting against wings. Okay, now moving on to the boarding craft types. We've got the Type 28 boarding craft, which has a flight slot of 0, movement of 12 inches max, damage track of 4, so a little bit tougher again than the wings, and a security detail of 2. and it has the Heroic Save Trooper system loadout. So if one of these tokens will be destroyed, you roll a Halo dice, and on a result of a 2, it is saved. Also here we have Covenant Type 28 Boarding Craft Elites. So these are the elites that are trying to get onto enemy ships and do bad things on those ships. So flight slots 0, movement of 12 inches, damage track of 6. They're tougher because they're elites, and a security detail of 3. The system loadouts are Assault Specialist, which affects the boarding result table, just like Spartans do, and Heroic Save Zealot. So Heroic Save Zealot works kind of the same way as the Heroic Save Trooper, except in this case you need a 1 or a 2 to save the token from being destroyed. Okay, finally let's take a look at Rho Barutamee, the Supreme Covenant Commander included in the starter set. So just like for the UNSC, for now we'll ignore the points, the zealots. Each zealot costs 30 points, blah blah blah, and we'll focus on the standard orders, special orders, and his unique ability. So his unique ability is that basically you can re-roll your initiative dice each turn if you want to. If you really want to get the initiative and maybe you've lost on the first roll, re-roll initiative dice and see if you get it on the second roll. Okay, so for standard orders, it has focused attack. So an element can re-roll up to 2 attack dice after it's rolled, its dice for any given attack. It has power to defenses. So any element can re-roll a single initial defense array die after it's re-rolled. After it's rolled its defense dice against an attack. He can also form up. So you can take, maybe the last part, the last element of a given battle group and put it together into a new battle group to keep it at fighting strength. Okay, so for special orders, we've got Fix Those Defenses and Enhanced Targeting. So Fix Those Defenses lets you remove all vulnerable markers from a capital element in your fleet, and Enhanced Targeting increases the firepower rating of any given firing solution, so basically any given attack, by 2. So Rho Barutamee's special orders are a little bit more varied, a little bit more utilitarian than Michael Stanforth's orders for the UNSC, which focuses purely on on boarding, whereas Rho's special orders are kind of if you need to get rid of vulnerable markers, you can. If you need to increase the firepower rating to maybe take out a ship once and for all, you can do that. It's a bit more of a utility based focus with him as opposed to the boarding of the UNSC. Okay, so that was a closer look at the Covenant fleet that is included in the Fall of Reach starter set for Halo Fleet Battles. As always, leave a thumbs up or a thumbs down on this video depending on how you felt about it, and also be sure to subscribe to keep up to date with new videos on the channel and also to support the channel as well. Also, be sure to check out Fleet Signal on social media and also check out fleetsignal.com as well. Okay, that's all for this video. Until next time, see ya!